Got it.
Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. Look at that. And 3, 2, 1, and we're live.
Yeah, and I've got an agenda for you. So we'll walk through the agenda. I hope I don't surprise you with anything. There we are.
Here we are.
So I'm going to copy this, punch it out, and then we are good to go. And I'll give you the link as well.
Yeah. Actually, I think I have it. I can just do here, copy streaming link. Got it.
Good.
I'm set. We are set, James.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for joining. I have a lot to talk about with you, and I think you know some of what we are going to talk about anyway.
I think I know.
Let me make sure there's no surprises. Somehow I can't see. There you are. Okay. I want to make sure I can keep an eye on you and juggle around all my different tiles. So let's see if anybody is out there. It'll take time for people to come in. Yep, some people are already joining in. And let's just, as usual, yeah, there's people there. Okay.
There's always people. There's always people there, and they always come in. And then over time, like before you know it, it's like 2 or 3 minutes in, and all of a sudden you just have like an avalanche of people. And then all of a sudden you get the live chat and it's going crazy. You're like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, so let's jump with, sometimes, as you know, on the internet, there's always haters. And one person said to me, oh, Rob, he's got a fake green screen swimming pool. I said, no, I can tell real water. I can see it rippling behind you. It's a real pool.
Watch this, watch this.
Yep, that's a hell of a green screen.
Unless I am, what's that guy's name? Zach the magician. That was just me just throwing, I just threw my cup in the water. But it proves the point. See, like I always get that. I get a green screen. Digital Dave over at Crazy for Cryptos, which is hilarious because he's like, he would have the most monstrous green screen of all time because he's in Thailand and all these different things. So yeah, we don't do those.
Excellent. Well, let's, I want to walk through a number of items that I know is of interest to the audience. And what I'll do is I'll walk through the stuff that I think you and I can have a very interesting conversation about. And then you can decide where you want to start first, or we can just follow the flow. So I think we should talk about the state of the market. You had some questions for me regarding some of my Bitcoin indicators like RSI, MACD, etc. I think it's very important to talk about scammers and some of the more sophisticated scammers I've seen. I mean, it's unbelievable what's going on right now. Talk about security, how you store your crypto and how you protect it for your loved ones. Your opinion on crypto IRAs. I get a lot of questions around crypto IRAs. I have my own theory, but I'd like to hear yours, and then you and I can compare notes. Yeah. And then some of the news, like T-Mobile being sued over a SIM swap attack.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the disconnection between tech stocks and crypto. And I've got my theory on that too, which could be an interesting conversation. What I call the calm before the storm. Bitcoin supply shock, we've heard of for a long time. The ETF corner, which will come first, Bitcoin or Ethereum. And so much more. FUD manipulation, Jerome Powell, the government, Paraguay, tokens like FTX token, Cell token. I know you know Voyager token. I'd like to know your take on that, and a whole bunch more stuff. So that's where I'm coming from. It's a packed agenda. Where would you like to begin?
Just a small smidgen of the crypto market, asked by James. Let's start. You know what was great? I caught your video. I think it was yesterday, and it was about indicators. And it was how to tell your family or bring your family into Bitcoin. And you were talking about some pretty good ones like the MACD, and how you were feeling like it was like one of the most accurate. And you were talking about 80% type of success rates. And I thought that was just amazing. So I was going to see if you could bring us through like the newbies like myself, who doesn't really use technical analysis, because your background is not in crypto. Yours is in equities and trading the markets, the traditional markets.
Correct. Yes.
So show us how you would actually set up the MACD from actually scratch, and then show us like the RSI, the relative strength index, just real quick.
Yeah. So I can do it on TradingView Live, and I can share a screen. But first of all, it's important to note that when you're looking, before we jump into an actual chart, when you're looking at crypto, like things like Bitcoin, it's very much driven by money flows and not necessarily by charts. You can tell a lot more from a chart, from an equity than you can for crypto. That being said, there are some indicators that I use that are extremely helpful to help me identify bottoms and tops. Now, in addition, another caveat to what I'm about to show you is when you look at the flat market we've had over the last 2 months, it's very difficult to determine trends because charts work really well when you're going up 45 degrees or down 45 degrees. When they're flat, you don't get as many signals. So there are just some of the things I'd like to tell you guys about. So let's pull up HR. I'm going to share my screen.
You know what? And then James, as you're doing that, I find like some of the smartest people in the space, they kind of all agree in how they look at these charts for cryptocurrency. Because I had CJ Reichel over from Market Rebellion on, and he was kind of saying the same thing before we did the interview, which was real quick. And his big thing is about volume and the different things that are going on. I was like, and he was talking about, I know you said it yourself, so I'm like, I got to remember to ask James about that.
Yeah, well, volume is also very, very important. And we're coming into a very slow volume period of August. So I normally get a little bit bearish during August, at least on the equity side, because people go on vacation. And when people are on vacation, there's no trading happening. So let's, this is kind of my crypto short list of things I look at. And let's pull up a bunch of stuff. Let's look at Bitcoin right now. There's a couple of things I do first. Is that visible on your side? Does it look okay?
I can see it.
Excellent. All right. So first of all, it's important to look at different time frames when you look at crypto. So let's zoom out. Did I get this from you? I think, Rob, I did. If in doubt, zoom out. It's a very famous old expression, but it's so important.
You may have heard me say it, but I heard it from Diddy over at the Bitcoin family, the guy that sold everything in 2017 and went in heavy. So
okay, that's cool. So this is kind of like my kind of go-to setup. It has RSI, which needs to be tweaked. I always use an RSI of 10, not 14. 14 is kind of the common one, but I just prefer 10.
Okay.
And it gives me kind of more sharpness in how I identify things. And remember, TA is one of my kind of 8 tools in my tool chest. It's very important to look at so many other factors. So a couple of lines here you see on my Bitcoin chart. And I'm very big on the simple stuff. So as soon as you start making things very complicated, you can start getting mixed signals, because I also believe, and I don't want this to become a TA lesson, but you can make a chart tell you anything you want to see if you try hard enough. Okay. So I like to keep things as simple as possible, although my screen may not look that simple to your average person. Down the bottom, we've got RSI. When it dips down here, it's definitely oversold. So you can see over the last, like we can zoom in and see it, but as we just zoom out for now. And then up here, I've got my bottom trend line. This is kind of what I call the floor, which ranges is about 30,300, 30,400. That's what I see as my floor. It's been breached once.
Right.
Okay, that's when we wick down to 28K. Now, what I also have here is kind of the upper resistance line, which is downwards. So what I mean by this is I feel that it's like a coiled up spring. It's like they're squeezing Bitcoin into this narrower and narrower range with the floor that's probably not going to go anywhere with all the money that's coming in. And only amount of time is going to break out. At the weekend, I thought we got above 34K, and I thought it was going to flip that downward line into support. It didn't. It failed. But there's going to come a time where it does. There's just simply too much goodness out there. Now, it's also very important to look at the macro picture as to what's going on. And here we have Bitcoin 50% off its all-time high, and you've got equities making all-time highs. So
huge in equities, right? S&P 500, everything.
Yeah, so we've got this disjoint between equities and crypto, and that lack of correlation, I think, is a positive thing. And my video yesterday was all about kind of money supply and fiat and hedges and all those different types of topics. It would not surprise me if the stock market were to correct 10% or crash 20%, there would be, for the first time ever, a flow to safety, and that would be Bitcoin. I'm just guessing here, but it's all theoretically possible from some of the stuff I see. So you wanted to look at MACD,
right?
That's the RSI. So I have MACD that I pop up here. So I go to my indicators, and I pull up my MACD, and there's a favorite I use, and that is the Chris Moody MACD indicator. Now it looks a bit messy, but when you zoom in more to say the last 2 months, you'll see here it's definitely extremely oversold. And this would be kind of a time to enter, time to enter, time to enter. If you're a short-term trader, I'm not. I'm kind of a buy and holder, but I do like to step in and buy when things are cheap. Like last time I bought Bitcoin was when it breached the 30,000 level. And I went in and made a little portfolio because I thought that was an extreme bottom. And if you look at some of the other names that I like to look at, like Ethereum right now, let's see how that matches up here in this chart. Ethereum is, considering all of the good information and good news out there, I cannot believe it's so low. I mean, it did 2.5 trillion over the last quarter in terms of transactions, which far exceeds that of Bitcoin. You have everybody piling onto the Ethereum network to run all sorts of DeFi programs like crazy. It's the de facto standard. And you have a Brazilian ETF opening up yesterday. You have 3 Ethereum ETFs in Canada. You've got 2 filed that haven't given notification if they're going to be approved or not, which is actually a bullish sign. So I think one of the questions I had for you, could there be an Ethereum ETF before a Bitcoin ETF? And that wouldn't surprise me too. The last key indicator before we get off the charts, I don't want this to be a TA charting session, is this is this area here, which I find extremely important. So I'm going to simplify things so people can see. This is the Bollinger Bands that I use. I buy when things escape 2 standard deviations. So what you have is this big channel here. And when things are within that channel, it's kind of the range. It goes bounces up and down. But when it escapes those channels, it escaped here, here, and here, and here. These are times to buy from a Bollinger Band perspective. And this works for me 80+% of the time. And every time I trade, I watch, I monitor, and I analyze exactly what goes on. And it works extremely well for equities too.
Gotcha. So, and then I'm looking at the top of the Bollinger Bands. I'm guessing those are the times when you might consider selling if you were one of those guys. Okay.
Yeah, this was a perfect sell indicator right here. Freaking nailed it. Same here. Nailed it. Same here. I mean, it is the way I have it set up and configured. It just works really, really well. So
that's pretty awesome.
That's a little bit about that. And again, but it's just one of the tools. Remember, things like Bitcoin is heavily manipulated right now. We'll talk about that in a little while. About Larry Fink from BlackRock. He owns 13% of Microstrategy, and he says, there's no interest in Bitcoin right now. I don't see any institutional investment. I mean, these guys, they should be arrested for the type of FUD they're spreading because they are literally lying to people.
Or they should run for office. One of those two. Because let me or they should get into the World Poker Tour, because their game face it's immaculate. I gotta tell you, I could not go there and be like, if someone asked me, so Rob, why did you invest in a MicroStrategy? Well, I think it's a great company. It's doing a lot of good things with data analytics, and I've really put nothing with Bitcoin. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So that is amazing how they were able to do that.
And just the fact that you got BlackRock. What do they have? 8 trillion.
Yeah, it's huge.
So some massive amounts of money, and then they're buying up all the single-family homes. In the United States, preventing people from having the American dream, as they call it. I think it's shocking. And then you got Capital Group buying another 12% of MicroStrategy. And the reason they do that is because these hedge funds, they can't buy Bitcoin directly. It's against their charter, so they got to buy proxies. And I've been saying to people since December, MicroStrategy is the best proxy for Bitcoin that exists. So anyway, that's the kind of FUD news. Let's talk about politicians, because you mentioned it and you brought me down a rabbit hole. When I see people like this fellow Jerome Powell, okay, he's the guy, the money machine go brr type of guy. He said, I think it was yesterday or today, I can't remember, but I read it somewhere. He said, you wouldn't need cryptocurrencies if you had a digital US currency. Now, I know all about CBDCs. There's no difference between a CBDC and fiat currency. In fact, it's the same thing. In fact, most of the US digital currency is digital anyway right now. They just press a button to generate trillions. So why would he say something so stupid? Is it trying to bring calmness to the markets? It's like when he says, well, I just think inflation doesn't exist. And then a month later, well, it might be a little bit transitory. Oh yeah, it's transitory. It'll be fine next month. When we know, and I did an analysis yesterday in my video, I pulled up a whole bunch of data over the last 5 years from the Chapman Index, which is one of the most reputable inflation indexes out there. And they were shut down back in 2019, so they can't publish anymore. But when you pull up, say, 2015 to 2019, the average inflation rate between Texas and California is like 11 to 12% per year for 5 years. And that's before the printing money happened. And I also proved yesterday that when you print money, that money goes directly to household assets. But those household assets go to the wealthiest, top 1%, the Jeff Bezos, et cetera. They increase their invest. So I'd like to know your take on Jerome Powell, digital currencies, where you think all this is going. Are they all in denial? And then last point on that, and politicians, and I'm sorry for rambling here, the lady Lagarde in France, head of the European Central Bank, the way Europe is very anti anything that are very pro privacy.
Right.
But now they flipped to being completely pro CBDCs, which is the biggest violation of privacy you could ever imagine. Because if I was a government, I could turn off your wallet. I could reach into your back pocket, steal all you got. I can force you to spend the money that you have.
Yeah.
Where does privacy come in there? So
scary. Well, I mean, like that's a lot to unpack, James. A lot to unpack. But first of all, I will say this. I think in your video, you were talking about how you believed that the inflation rate wasn't 3% or 4% or whatever it was that you thought. You were saying it was something like, I want to say you said 13%. Was I wrong?
15 at least.
Yeah, because I was like, that's insane. And then, of course, you were talking about yesterday, and you're like, these are the numbers that it really looks like it actually is. And like just what you talked about it as far as inflation, the money doesn't go to us first, right? We are just, I hate to break it to everybody, we're just peasants. We're just living in the serfdom. So everything kind of starts off here at the very high end, the Jeff Bezos, the Warren Buffetts, right? And then as soon as they get all their money, then they do whatever they want with it. And then it kind of filters down into the masses, me and James and you watching the video. And then all of a sudden that money that actually had some kind of purchasing power begins to get eroded and eroded and eroded some more. So when when Jerome Powell talks about this, first of all, I want to be very careful because first of all, I have many fatal flaws. One of the fatal flaws that I have is I believe that everybody's like me, right? And they understand cryptocurrency, they really get digital assets. But with Jerome Powell, I mean, he knows the inner workings of finance. So when he knows about crypto and digital assets, I have to assume that he knows the intricacies of what is going on. So when he says things like, well, if we just had a CBDC, it will be the same as a cryptocurrency, which to the average person out there, if you walked, so here's the thing for you listening at home. If you walked up to anybody and said, what's the difference between the digital dollar and Bitcoin? What's the difference between a digital dollar and Dogecoin? They'd be like, well, I can spend it and it goes to me and I can actually get it. But I guess maybe the digital dollar is backed by the full faith and enforcement of the US government. And that's what they kind of think about. They don't really realize about the whole quantitative easing and how it can be generated from nothing and how it can just be put out into the circulating supply, which rapidly decreases the purchasing power of what you actually have as far as these digital dollars. So right now, just like you said, James, there is no difference between the dollar bill, the physical one that I hold in my hand, and the one that could be potentially on my phone. The only difference is, like you said, if you're in China and you get the digital yuan, how easy would that be just to go, we don't like your political agenda. We don't like that you were seen in some area protesting. We need to turn off all your spending power. And where does it go? Well, how do you spend it?
Confiscate everything. They don't even have to put you in jail anymore or the gulag or whatever. They can just turn off your money, which is the same thing.
Which would be worse? Which would be worse, James? Being in the gulag in a prison or being stranded somewhere without any kind of monetary compensation. And let's say you have no family. You are essentially discarded and you are out. That's I think would be the most scary thing I could think of.
And I think that's one of the things, the difference between Europe and the US. I think Europe is getting very desperate now around crypto. And you can see that with all the activities in places like the UK and other countries that are trying to banish it as much as possible. And you've got countries like Turkey now, I read they have something like 40% inflation.
Right.
And again, they're government numbers. Can you imagine what the real inflation is like? Imagine going down to the local market and buying some apples. That's where the rubber meets the road, you know. But one of the things that I find very interesting is kind of freedom in the US. If they were to put a true central bank digital currency along the lines of the Chinese version,
right,
that would be a massive invasion of privacy. And I don't know if it could float in that format. So we'll see. I just thought that was very, very narrow-minded of Jerome Powell to say, you know, if we had a digital currency, we wouldn't need crypto. Does he have any idea what's going on in the DeFi space and everything else? So,
well,
again,
but you know what? It's like when we say, sorry to interrupt, but when we say like manipulation, some people in this space will say there is no manipulation. It is just we have too many sellers and not enough buyers, and that's what's going on. But there's different levels of real manipulation, right? There is a subtle nudge of manipulation. Jerome Powell says something like this. The CEO of BlackRock says there's no real demand in cryptocurrency. Guggenheim, Menard comes out and says, you know what, this is just a big tulip mania, even though they're going behind the scenes and doing things with cryptocurrency. Those are just subtle different things, and they all add up to one big thing. And then for me to say, like I said this in my last video, I said, to me to say that it's 12% manipulated or 32% or 70, I have no idea, but I know that it's alive and well, just like JP Morgan and their spoofing of the precious metals, which they got busted on about a year ago and paid $920 million in restitution. So, I mean, look, this is all over the place. It's not just crypto, it's in the traditional markets. And I know you know these things, and hopefully now people at home go, oh, that makes a lot more sense.
And I think what I try to get across in my channel here is there's not many opportunities for the little guy to get ahead or the little gal. But this next 10 years will be a transformational time from so many perspectives. Everything will be turned on its head. The traditional financial services industry, the way central banks operate, governmental money. And we're already seeing all the cracks in the system right now. If you zoom out and you analyze, you know, everything that's happening, it's painting this most perfect story. So my message to people is, yeah, Bitcoin might be risky, but the upside far exceeds the downside. And as well as like Ethereum, other crypto assets that have real use cases that are going to transform the way banking is done, lending, borrowing, insurance. That for me is super exciting. And if you can get on the right train at the right time, that can drive transformational wealth. Because if you are living paycheck to paycheck, and I've got a lot of people in my channel that do, and they're saying, oh, yeah, hey, how am I going to escape this debt hole? I rent. I don't have any hard assets. And I always emphasize hard assets that appreciate fast, like real estate that you have. And I have too, or, you know, a whole bunch of Tesla stock, things like that. You can survive. But if you're starting from scratch, how do you get out of the rat race? And there's not many options right now. So what would you advise somebody? Somebody comes to you this morning and says, hey, Rob, I've got 20,000 in the bank. I live paycheck to paycheck. I rent. My rent just went up. My grocery bill is now $350 a week instead of $200 a year ago. My medical insurance is $1,200 a month. How can I get out of this poverty hole right now with 20,000? What would you tell them?
Gosh, that's a difficult one, because we get these questions all the time, don't we? Like where should I park my money? You've seemed to have done it. What happened? And then, the first thing I tell people is, I'm not a financial advisor. This is just financial opinion, not financial advice. But if I was you and I was in your position, and really it kind of comes down to your specific position, because my goals are not your goals, right? So like if you take a look at, let's say I'm young Rob, 18 years old, and doing a lot of great things. I've got 2 good knees. My back doesn't hurt all the time. I don't have grandkids running around, and everything's great. And I'm just starting off, and somehow I get $20,000, but I'm living paycheck to paycheck. What would I do? Well, the first thing obviously is I take a look at the debt that I have, if I have any kind of debt, and go, am I have those crazy credit cards at 20, 29%, 35%? Am I doing something goofy like payday loans and something like that? Well, I got to stop that. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to start to do is go, where do I want to put this money? And like you say, like hard assets. To me personally, I always like to kind of hedge my bet. And I can do some really risky stuff. Let's just say okay, if I want to do super risky, why don't I just put some in Dogecoin or something crazy like that? They could go to the moon tomorrow. Or I could do something a little bit less risky, which is a hard asset like land, like property, like things that can actually give me a tax benefit by owning them, and get into something like that and maybe do short-term rentals, which is what I always like to talk about. So there's that part. And then if I just want to talk about cryptocurrency in general, I want a dollar cost average. I want to get in a little bit at a time because we never know where the market is. Look, in April and May, I was called a moron many times, first by my wife. No, I'm just kidding. First by a lot of different viewers because they said, look, it's going to be a massive bull run and you need to go all in right now. That was when Bitcoin was like at 55, 58,000. And they said, you are a relic. You don't understand. The institutions are here and they're going to buoy the price and it's going to stabilize Bitcoin, the entire market. And they said, you are out of your mind, but that's just my investment opinion. So dollar cost average in, just like James was talking about, get into those positions, looking at the charts. Actually, I hate doing it. I know I got to do more of it, but pick those points and then just go from there. So for me, to summarize what I just said, I would first pay off all my bills, make sure I'm there. I'd probably invest into myself, get a little education, put that in money into me. Then I would take a look at lands and property and not like the ones that are overvalued. Because right now, property is like super overvalued. I couldn't get into it right now if I wanted to. I'd have to wait. I would just hold on to it, dry powder. And then I would get into cryptocurrency. I would definitely get into cryptocurrency right now because it's floundering. It's at a low time. And I wouldn't get into equities because we just saw a massive, huge bump. So why would I get into that? That's just what I would do. And then I would do my own research into different projects, whichever those are. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, Theta, AVAX.
Excellent.
Solana.
Because many of them will triple or 10x over the next 1 year or so. I firmly believe, but it's the other thing that I want to stress as well to the audience, and I'd like to hear your take on this too, is I am on the receiving end of so many scam type tokens.
God damn.
It is terrible. And people get convinced and they believe like Hex is the latest one. But yeah, I don't know if you know that Hex group, but I always say the more you hear about something, the more it's pushed, the shadier it is. And it makes me very nervous. But what would your advice be to people out there? And how can they avoid these scam type tokens to protect their precious nest egg?
So look, here's the thing. I'm not saying anything is a scam or is not a scam. I think, OneCoin was definitely a scam. BitConnect was definitely a scam. And there are a lot of different coins out there that you can probably make money on, but chances are you're not going to sell fast enough. And you're just going to get the rug pulled on you. And that is like that. There's a new one called Million Coin, which has 1 million. And it's going up. And I'm like, first of all, what does it do? So first we have to differentiate between who are you? Because my goals aren't your goals. So what kind of person are you? Are you a more of a gambler? And that's fine. I lived in Vegas for 2 years. Some of my best friends were big gamblers. And you want to get into something like that? Okay. But that's your prerogative. Or are you more of like a long-term investor and just going to buy and hold, sell when you need to, get into other positions and go from there? So like when I start to look at these projects, the first thing I look at is what does it do? That's the first thing I always ask. I remember, James, you probably get a bunch of emails, right? Hey, pump my project, or hey, I'll pay you a bunch of money. Talk about my project. And of course I just delete. So one time, my assistant, she brings it to me. She goes, hey, this one looks, she's a real sweet gal. She goes, this one looks really good. It's called Panda Safe or Panda Coin. And 5% goes to save the pandas. Can you believe it? And I was like, Haley, what does this do? And she's like, I don't know, but they save the pandas. And I go, look, you have to understand, that's probably a scam coin too. Because if they're going to take 95% equity and do absolutely nothing, the coin does nothing and it goes to the owners. And then they put 5%, which is a pittance, towards the pandas that has nothing to do with anything. So look at, what does it do? What is it going to do in the future? Then the next thing I look at is the tokenomics, how much is actually locked up, how much supply is there? And then right along there is the team. Because I think that the more that you look at the people behind the project, the more you can understand of where that project's going to go. And I think that is one of the big driving forces. And if you have, it doesn't matter if you have like a ton of smart people on it, that's great, but you need the whole business acquisition of what's going on. So you need the developers, you need the CTOs, you need also the business type people to actually make that place run. You need the marketing, which is like the oil of the whole business. Because if you don't have all these things together, the business doesn't really get out there and doesn't make it to what it should be. And
two things: good quality backers and partnerships.
Yes.
And then dApps, they're kind of like the key things I look at. So let's switch gears for a second. I want people to get as much value out of this as possible and pull all that greatness out of your brain. I look at a lot of other stuff as well, like a lot of on-chain metrics. I look at a lot of derivative data. I look at spot data across everything. And it just looks, everything is so suspiciously quiet, which tells me, the big guys, the big money guys are keeping the lid on things so things don't get too high so they can fill their bags. And that has never been clearer over the last 3 weeks with all the metrics I'm looking at. So I know you probably believe there is manipulation, but it seems so obvious. And then the retail investors are getting so rattled because we've been flat for 2 months. So first of all, do you believe in manipulation? And second of all, what would you do to tell the retail investors to stay calm and hold on tight, or get in if they haven't gotten in already?
First, I'd say watch James's channel at InvestAnswers, because he's James. I got to tell you, I'm not going to blow smoke, but you are like one of the smartest guys out there as far as like the math and the amount of effort that you put into it. No, it's true. And then I've seen it. And then also I would say, first of all, just like what we said, when in doubt, zoom out. There are these times when it's very difficult to pull the trigger. I totally understand, because I went through 2017 and everything just kind of went down. I mean, the value went down 80-90%. But when you zoom out and take a look at, the different things that have happened over the last, I don't know, what was that, 2009? Let me do some quick math. Like about 12 years or so. There's been a lot of improvement in how much you could actually get as far as your ROI. So when I take a look at things, I'm like, because people always ask me, when's this going to turn around? Because damn it, I mean, we've been in this, we were at 60,000 at one point, 64,000 April, May, and now we're at the halfway, 50% of that. So is it going to keep going down to 20,000, maybe 10,000? I mean, I just covered a video today where there's a guy who thinks it's going down to $8,000. I'm like, $8,000. Yeah, you got to watch it. It's a crazy one. And I think to myself, I'm like, do you think it's really going to do that? Do you think it's going to go all that way down? And then here's what I always like to show this. Let me share my screen if I can. Look at this. Let's just zoom way, way out, right? If you invested $1,000, actually it's 11 years ago. In Google, you'd have 6,000. That's pretty good, right? Not bad. Facebook, 9,000, Amazon, 22,000, Netflix, 34, Tesla, 159, and Bitcoin, $237 million. So when we talk about the little guy getting big, this is one of those few opportunities. Now, do I know when this parabolic bull run is going to happen? I don't have a crystal ball, and I'm not Nostradamus. But if I believe in the cycles, even if you believe in the straight 4-year or the elongated cycles, those times they are a coming, and that's really all I can tell the average investor.
Yeah, and I do believe the future is very bright, but I stress as well that people can't expect those 450 million% returns over 10 years. Those days are over. When you get in $1 or 30 cents or $3 or $300, yeah. But now at this stage of the game, I do believe in the next 10 years, there's a very high probability will be somewhere between $650,000 and $1 million. But you got to remember 10 years from now as well, $1 million US will be worth $500,000 in today's purchasing power. So not that big a deal. There's a guy called Breedlove, and he believes Bitcoin, he's going to $12.5 million by the year 2031. And he makes the case, and I actually tried to back into his numbers with numbers. So he believes that the money supply will double every 4 years for the next 10 years.
No way. He thinks there's that many trillions coming in?
Well, but you can actually make sense of it when you look at the cost of money printing and the cost of financing the money printing. You're digging yourself into a hole, and that cost of financing means you got to print more faster, and that causes debasement, which means you got to print more. And that's why I think the only way the U.S. economy and other economies is not just North America, U.S., Canada, etc. It's New Zealand, it's Australia, it's all over Europe, it's Turkey, it's Zimbabwe. All these countries are printing money like there's no tomorrow, just hitting the button, print, print, print. And the only way you can reduce the amount of debt you have in real terms is to inflate your way out of it. And that's why I believe inflation is going to be horrific over the next 5 years. And that's what we all need to get ready for. So anyway, thank you for that information. There's another thing which I'm very interested in. I try and monitor and figure out is what I've been talking about for a long time is what I call the supply shock. And it's like there's a funny meme I saw a long time ago, and it was for something else, but it's Johnny Depp opening up a treasure box, looking for gold, and it's empty. So I want to, once I get the time, I'm going to create a meme. It's like we're going to be you and me opening up that treasure box and looking inside, and there's no Bitcoin because it's all been bought up. The big guys are buying it all up. The supply and exchanges is dwindling. They're keeping the lid on things. And by the way, your guy, you said a few hours ago, $8,000 Bitcoin. If that's the case, and if he knew that for a fact, I guarantee you the hedge funds would not be buying at 33,000 hand over fist. They are not stupid. They know this is the bottom. That's why I think 28 to 30 is the maximum floor where we are right now. If there's a big wick down, it could happen. We could hit 25K, but it'll be there for minutes. Guess how many minutes were we at 28,000?
Well, see, this was going to ask you because I know you bought at that point. How did you I'm guessing you have alerts on your computer where as soon as it hits, you're like, I got to buy.
Yeah, I have alerts on my phone, on my computer, on my trading charts. I set up alerts for MACD, RSI, price levels, and the alarm bells were going off. And I think I was actually grilling or cooking or something at the time. I don't remember exactly. I was like, oh, what's happening? So I just turn everything off and jump on the machine. But you got to be that way. So I'm very big in letting things come to me and not chasing in anything in life. Just set your traps and wait for the things to fall into your traps. But the other thing you can actually look at as well is when things dip below certain levels, you can watch the money flow in, the buy orders. So I'm on FTX and I can see the buy wall, and it's as clear as day. It's like, okay, we're under 30K. There's hedge funds and professional investors that just jump right in. And once you see that, then you know with confidence, this is the bottom.
Hey, James, do us all a favor. Show us, can you bring up FTX and see what the buy walls and the sell walls are right now? Can you do that?
I would love to, but then you'd see my portfolio.
Ah, okay.
So what I can try to do is I can figure next time we get together, I will definitely do that because that's super interesting data. We could show a whole bunch of stuff that I look at that would help give people confidence because I get that all the time. That guy shorted MicroStrategy at, I think it was $688, was $2 off the top a few weeks ago, shorted the trade desk.
Yeah.
I sold Apple today at 150, which was right at the top. And, so I use all these indicators to find the tops and also find the bottoms because, the old adage is going to sound really cliche, but buy low, sell high. Do anything, but just use a lot of discipline and science to find those levels. So anyway, the point is, I believe a Bitcoin supply shock is coming. Sure. There was a guy from Skybridge Capital, Scaramucci's CIO, Troy Gayeski, said, the crunch is coming. What do you think? Is there a crunch coming?
Well, so I will say this. I covered a story yesterday. It was Glassnode, and they had taken a look at all the different Bitcoin that have been flowing into the exchanges during April and May. And of course, we know what happened then because people just sold off. And then now we can see it in June and July. Everything's being taken off the exchanges and into cold storage. So if you take a look at that, you're like, well, that's a positive, perhaps, maybe that's going on. But then this supply shortage, I also took a look at another piece of data, which took a look at how many miners are actually selling. and it looks like they're not selling as much, which I thought was kind of odd, especially because all the Bitcoin miners in China, I thought that they probably sold off a ton so they could actually pick up their operation and go to Kazakhstan or right here in sweet Texas. But I think those days are over because they all got to be out anyhow. I think the last day was June 21st when they cut off the power. So when we take a look at that, I can see it. But if we take a look at what you were talking about, as far as like manipulation and these hedge funds getting in these type of things, let me show you something. This is my favorite thing from yesterday. I talked about it was J.P. Morgan and UBS. They plan to onboard the active crypto strategies. So
I was a Bank Verein UBS customer for the longest time. I closed my bank a year ago.
Yeah,
and they came out. Yeah, steer clear of cryptocurrencies. This is hilarious. And tell us the second part of this story, because I know where you're going.
So this was July 5th.
Yeah.
This story was July 14th. And then, of course, JP Morgan. And when people say, well, there's no manipulation, I just talk about the JP Morgan thing about spoofing and things like that, which was just a year ago. So I just find it very hypocritical. And then just like what you said, Fink from BlackRock is like, no. There's no.
Yeah. So this is the sad thing, because and what I really see, and this is why I'm convinced this is a transformational time, the big money is getting in, and the big money are keeping the crypto for their high net worth individual customers.
Yeah, that was the other
thing. UBS, biggest Swiss bank, say, hey, very risky. Don't touch crypto, everybody. Don't touch crypto. A few days later, we're setting up a crypto fund for vetted high net worth investors. So you poor people, go screw yourselves. We're saving we're saving the bags for the super rich. So get out of our faces. That's basically, when you look at these two articles, that's what they're saying. And this is the message I think you and I need to get across to people, because I think it's criminal. I really do. It's very upsetting.
Yeah. And you know what, just like what you said, just because I forgot about that one little piece, the affluent ones. This was the same article here. It said here they're going for their fund of funds units, and it's all about UBS, the biggest Swiss bank, started exploring ways to offer crypto to its affluent clients this May. So if I have some high net worth individuals, and I'm like, look, there's this new thing out here called crypto. You may have heard about it, and we'd like to get you into it. I think, to make sure that they're on board, you want to make sure that you get the lowest price you possibly can, and then let that price shoot up, because then you look like geniuses. And all the people like, these guys, UBS, fantastic. They called it at the very beginning. They didn't call it at the very beginning. They manufactured it. Again, I'm not going to say that manipulation is like 99% of this market, but let's just call a spade and say that it is actually out there.
Yeah. And this is just so important. These shenanigans are happening everywhere. And just so people know, these things are reserved for who are called accredited investors. And then depending on your jurisdiction, I think an accredited investor in Switzerland has more than 10 million in assets. And other thing just to share with you is this.
What do you got?
You asked about miners not sharing. Did that share? Oops.
InvestAnswers has started screen sharing. That's all it says.
Okay, so I went full screen, and bear with me 1 second.
It's pretty good.
There. Does that show?
Shows up. Perfect. Miner net. Oh, okay.
All right. So this is the question you asked. The miners are not selling anymore. This a red patch here in the month of June. This is when all the Chinese miners had to raise cash. They sold their cryptos so they could put their ASICs mining rigs, and tons of them. I think one plane landed with 6 tons of mining rigs. I calculated that was 11,000 computers on one plane. And that costs a lot of money to airlift those, that's a lot of money, but that's what happened. So a lot of the selling pressure in the month of June was here. And I think a lot of what's happening right now is manipulation. So we're not seeing the 900 crypto Bitcoins hitting the market every single day.
So James, here comes the big question. When's the turnaround? That's what everybody wants to know. Where do you think the turnaround is? Because I've heard everything from it's coming in August to it's coming into October to it's coming into May 2022.
Yeah, so this is the weird thing. We've inundated with a ton of FUD, bad news, orchestrated attacks by governments and financial institutions and all the big money players. Then we had the China clampdown and crackdown on all the miners and equity trade or crypto trading. It's just unbelievable what's actually happened. So two things that I'm amazed by is one, the resilience of Bitcoin and the whole crypto market. Yeah, we're down, but we're still ahead of where we were back in January. So put that in perspective, and that's only 6 months ago. Second of all, I always believed from looking at Bitcoin and charts, I always believed that price follows the hash rate. Hash rate got hammered. But for the first time ever, it's upticking right now. Well, not for the first time ever, but the first time in the last 4 to 6 weeks, it's really beginning to uptick, which means the price should follow. So I was back in March and April, I was saying, July is going to be great. July is going to be great. The reasons are I see the hedge funds coming in, which they did. I see NYDIG working with the banks, enabling 650 banks in the US do crypto.
Yeah.
The El Salvador news blew me away, et cetera. I mean, it's just so much goodness, but we still have a lid on things. July is running out, so we're not getting the type of lift that I expected. But you never know with Bitcoin. You can go to bed at midnight, wake up at 3 a.m., and then Bitcoin goes up $6,000. So that can always happen. We're going into August, which could be bad for the stock market. And there's a couple of things that may not surprise me. One is that the stock market could get a little correction, and there could be a flight to safety. People are saying, oh my God, like me, I'm ditching Apple today. It's like, I'm going to sell my Apple and I'm going to buy Bitcoin. I get that question every day. I work for Amazon. I got a lot of Amazon shares. Should I sell and buy Bitcoin? I got a lot of Apple shares. The cost basis is $20. Should I sell and buy Bitcoin? I was like, if you don't have any, you need some. That's basically my answer, Take 5, 10, 20%, whatever it is, and get some. And I think that could actually happen for the first time ever. The second thing, there's some weird stuff happening behind the scenes, and I haven't been able to put my finger on it exactly. But Grayscale is going to drop 16,000 Bitcoin, maybe transfer them or sell shares.
The shares.
I think an over-the-counter type arrangement could happen between Michael Saylor and that a chunk of Bitcoin between some player somewhere. And I think that could be seen and reflected in the weakness in MicroStrategy stock price right now. Because he did say he was going to issue $1 billion worth of stock to buy Bitcoin. But that's the last I heard of it. And I see some weird grumblings happening. So that could be another big catalyst if that happens behind the scenes and the world recognizes it. So
I can see it. I mean, if it goes that way, sure. I'd rather have it go to, MicroStrategy, because I think if there's anybody who has the definition of the diamond hands, that would probably be Michael Saylor, right? And that guy is a staunch. Have you ever listened to any interview he talks about?
So I've been following that guy since September, hardcore. I've heard everything. I could do a Michael Saylor impression for you. I could give you one of his hour-long speeches.
Exactly. Like we could do right now. Like I could ask you a question and you could tell me in 25 minutes the answer to whatever that is. Because that was
like buying a Manhattan city block.
So. Yeah, that's exactly right. This is exactly how he does it. And like if you say anything about like, how about Ethereum and DeFi? Well, that's and Bitcoin is going to be the global. You're like, geez, this guy. If there's one guy who's like a single point of thought processing, that is Michael Saylor. So I'm like, if it's going to go that way, I'm cool with that. But like these hedge funds and things like that, look, people talk to me about it's going to be great and they're going to buoy it. I'm like, that's not what hedge funds do. Hedge funds are here to make a ton of money, right? And when they see some volatility and they have a chance to make a quick cash, they're going to do it. And that's exactly what they've been doing. But I think just like you said, with those sell and buy walls, you can just see how people are flowing into the money. Now, I agree with you. I think that we could see, like, I think you said 28,000, maybe 25, 26.
Max, no, 28 would be my kind of max floor. If there is a big, huge stock market correction or some type of gray swan event, as I refer to, we might see 25K. 20K? No. We were at 20K in 2017. Who would get it, that is just too far a reach from my perspective. There's too much money, too much adoption. It's too early. Like even people that don't like Bitcoin would be backing up their trucks at 25K. So I don't think we can reach that low. So, and I have people saying, I've been trying to tell people to buy Bitcoin since it was, 4K, 5K, 9K. And they call me every now and again and say, do you think it's going back to 9K?
You know what? Even see those people, even if it goes to 9K, they're not buying it at 9K. Even if it goes to 5K, they probably won't buy it. Because this is what I found. The people that buy it, the reason why they buy it isn't because of the price so much. It's because they see like what is happening in the global economy, and just like what we talked about with the macroeconomics and the money printing. They go, okay, I can kind of get that. I can see it as being a store of value. I can see it actually moving into those type, and I can actually see it. And I got to tell you, I was wrong about the whole currency. For the longest time, ever since 2018, I said, there's no way Bitcoin can be a cryptocurrency because it doesn't work like that. And of course, Lightning came around with Strike and Jack and his project, and they made it work in El Salvador. So, I mean, who knows?
Yeah, but even look at the chart right now, Bitcoin, just while we were talking, wicked down to 31K.
Okay.
It bounced straight up $700 in minutes after that. So this is what I talk about when I mean the buying pressure. We have Lucas Ryan, big fan. I always see you. Thanks for being here. He thinks 20K is possible. I can't mathematically see it because there's too little supply, and all the coins that are there now have moved to strong hands. Everybody who's holding, except for the people that got in at the 65K, they've all been shaken out. Everybody else is holding, and they know the future, and they know where fiat is going, and they know the stock market's at an all-time high. They know that bonds have negative yields. They know that real estate's expensive like hell. Where else do you put your money, everybody? That's the question. So this is, I just look at macro and data and come up with my own decisions. Anyway, a couple of questions for you before we'll open up to a few questions. I know we're talking a long time, and I hope people aren't getting bored and tedious. So you and I, we're betting people, which's going to come first in the US, an Ethereum ETF or a Bitcoin ETF?
Man, well, so really what does it come down to for the ETF for the actually be approved? The SEC has to have assurances that manipulation is not really going on. And I'm hard pressed to say that
the SEC don't care about manipulation. The markets have been manipulated since the beginning of time. That's not a valid excuse.
It's not a valid excuse, but they really do want to see something, to kind of give in that way. And I will say this, like I know with Grayscale, because they just brought in BNY Mellon to be part of their managing a cryptocurrency and doing some other types of business processes. And they know how these things work with the SEC because Grayscale has 3 different products that are registered with the SEC. One of those being those large cap funds that they have. So I think if they bring on BNY Mellon, I think they're the fastest ones that they could actually convert what they do for that Grayscale trust fund, the Bitcoin trust fund, to transfer it over to an ETF. Because really, I mean, not how hard, it's super hard. But I mean, is there that much of a big difference of what's going on? And they bring in BNY Mellon, which is like one of the oldest institutions in the United States, if not the world, with their 3 trillion assets under management and 42 trillion, something like that.
And you have to understand, you nailed it there, because you have to understand how Wall Street works. Everything is calculated. Everything is 4-dimensional chess. These players know what's up. Yeah. There was questions I had for the last couple of months is, why haven't Grayscale filed for their Bitcoin ETF? It's like, I don't know, they're cooking up something. I don't know what they're cooking up, but they're cooking up something. Boom, BNY Mellon, who jumped hard into Bitcoin custody a few months ago, BNY Mellon. It's all planned. It's all orchestrated. Who has very tight relationships with the SEC? BNY Mellon. You know what people go to the public office first is so they can get a job on Wall Street afterwards. It's the same deal time and time again. So question for you, fun question of the day.
Okay.
Rob, will you promise everybody here, especially Caligula 71, when you get to 500,000 subscribers, you will jump into the pool with all your clothes on, but leave the mic there?
Easy. That's easy.
Okay.
Do that
There you
maybe
go.
in like the next 1,000 subscribers.
Okay,
Oh
good.
yeah, sir. 500,000, no problem. No
That was,
problem. You know
that was
what?
a fun
You know what?
question.
So how about this? I get to 500,000 subs or we hit 100,000 Bitcoin. I'll jump in the pool.
Good.
Cannonball style.
Awesome. Good stuff. Second, well, quick questions. A lot of people here are asking about Ethereum and where you see it going. And how big are you as an Ethereum investor? I know you're into a lot of other stuff.
It's my second biggest hold. It's my second biggest hold.
Good.
And
after Bitcoin. So you're just like me. What are your favorite top 3 altcoins other than Bitcoin or Ethereum? The audience want to know.
That's tough. So Cardano is like my third or fourth. It always fluctuates, right? So Cardano is a big hold, and I think it's gonna do great things in August. Hope when everything starts to come out with the smart contracts, Alonzo gets implemented as it's doing it right now. And of course, we have 2 stake pools, so I heavily believe in Cardano. The next one, it would probably be between, gosh, Theta and maybe Solana. And I really got that from you and Mike the investor, because I just actually no. I'm gonna also split it up between Avalanche too. And the reason is because I feel like, well, Theta is going to be big just because of what it does. I mean, if you watching at home right now, what are you doing? You're watching this video while you're streaming. Well, everybody else is streaming, and it's super expensive to build all those the infrastructure and the servers and everything else that they have to do as far as Google. Why don't you just pay a little bit of Theta to people, and you can store it on their computers, and then you can actually cache everything and just pay a little bit in Theta. And that's, I think, is why Theta and TFU will be pretty huge. And then Solana, I mean, look, with those transactions per second and how cheap it is, that's exactly what we were promised with Ethereum, and it didn't work out. Maybe with Ethereum 2.0 to work, I have no idea. But then with Avalanche, I just did a deep dive like you did. I need to put it out. I'm just waiting. But 4,500 transactions per second, and then for the price of transactions being a penny, maybe 2. And they actually have this one called, it's a DEX called, I always want to call it Pergola, but it's called like Pergol or something like that. And it actually works. Pangolin. They have a ton of, that's it. And they have an actual ton of liquidity. So that's the one. And the last one I will always talk about, because I think it's going to do good and do well, is that World Mobile Token, which they've already deployed that in Tanzania. It's two-parter. They have the infrastructure with the solar panels and the AirPods or the Air nodes, where you can actually give telecommunications and internet to these villages. And then, of course, the blockchain, the finance, digital ID, the healthcare, everything you want to do and put on it is based off of Cardano on the World Mobile Token. So that was a long answer, but that's what I see. And then someone said Polkadot. Polkadot could actually be pushed in there as well. And only because what we and James talked about in the beginning about the team, look at the team that is actually being built. Dr. Gavin Wood was already part of the, as I call him, the Ethereum mafia. And then he branched off into Polkadot. Charles Hoskinson branched off into Cardano. Vitalik is still over at Ethereum. So, and then Lubin is for Consensus. So why couldn't, they've already done these things, these great things, and made multi-billion-dollar companies. Why couldn't they expand on that? Just like the PayPal mafia made Google, made LinkedIn, made Tesla, and so on and so forth. Yeah, good point. There's a question as well from Marcus. What do you think about Singularity DAO? That play? AI? The AI meets Ocean Protocol, whatever. I haven't dug into it myself, but I'm wondering, do you have any ideas about that? Somebody's asking from the audience. Well, I will tell you this. There's 2 to 3 things that's going to dominate and will create the next world power moving into the next century, which is, I believe, the ones that adopt and can tame artificial intelligence, the ones that can do the same thing with blockchain and really harness that power, and then also for commerce. I think that the days of China creating everything and being the ones of the mass producers is going to come to an end, and you're going to see like more world powers like in India and types of countries like that. So, and then AI, it's either the government's going to control it or these individual organizations, probably individual organizations. And there's a big race between everywhere in the world, especially China and the US and the EU for that. So as far as the other one, I don't know the project, but if they can nail it, AI is the next big thing.
Awesome. Cool. And a lot of people are asking about Link. I think Chainlink is one of those necessary things for all things DeFi, and it's super cheap right now. Just looking at Chainlink chart as we are talking here. I mean, $15.80, it just bounced off $15.60. I think not investment advice, investment opinion, as you say. But that under 16 bucks, that's one for the record books.
What was its all-time high? I'm trying to take a look at it.
Well, Chainlink hit 40 bucks, I think, a few weeks ago.
$53. $53 for Chainlink on. Gosh, doesn't say.
It hit 53 on, as you say, it was 9th of May. But it took a little. And during the crash, back in 23rd of May, it bounced right back to 35 bucks, and now it's kind of languishing between 25 and 16. But there's a lot of DeFi players are completely beaten up, which I think they're very, very oversold. So that's the skinny. So we'll see if there's any final things. By the way, everybody out there, Rob is a gentleman and a scholar. He's a veteran in more ways than one. He's a crypto veteran and also a military veteran too.
Army vet, 8 years.
Much respect for the guy. Any final questions you have for me before we wrap, or any questions from the team? BNB, I sold my Binance, by the way, everybody. 1 inch in Uniswap, similar. Yeah.
Okay. So here's my question, James. If you sold your Binance, I know your strategy, because you have a set amount of coins, which is smart, right? I think it's like what, 8 or 10?
It's now 13. So I violated my rule of holding no more than 10. So I'm over.
I did the same thing. So if you sold Binance, what did you pick up anything to replace that?
Aave. I ditched my Binance at around, I think. So I got into Binance as a proxy for the Coinbase IPO. So I bought first at 200, and then I bought again at 400, and I sold it at 350. And I don't know where Binance is right now. Let me see. But I took all the proceeds from that, and I got off of the Binance exchange. It's 316, so still ahead. But I bought Aave. That was my play. And
Stani and those guys.
Yeah, that's an impressive play as well. So fascinated by what they do. Fascinated by that whole space. So
sounds good. Yeah, man. That's all I wanted to know. And then of course, thanks for having me on the show. It's always good to get these different perspectives, because like when you talk to me about the wall, that the FTX wall, like I'm going to steal that from you. I'm going to totally rip it off and then use it on my channel every so often. And then those TA things with the MACD and RSA, I'm going to start to show more of those types
Bollinger Bands. And Bollinger Bands. That's the money. If you configure your Bollinger Bands, and you and I can have an offline and do that together, but
let's do it.
Dial that in. It is crazy. In fact, speaking of Chainlink, let's see where they are in the Bollinger Band right now.
Sure.
They are out of it. This as a classic case in point. Let's pop this up just to show, and we'll see if I'm right. You know, this is up there on the interweb. So this is the Bollinger Band for Chainlink. And as you can see, we have just dipped out of our Bollinger Band. That is a buy. This was a buy on the 22nd of June. This was a buy on the 23rd of May.
Hold my beer. Okay.
That's Bollinger Bands for you, everybody. Important to look at. But really, thank you so much as well for being a good comrade. And thanks everybody as well for being part of the audience. And
thanks everybody.
Let us know if you'd like to hear from Rob and I again, and what you'd like for us to talk about. But we stay on top of exactly what's going on in this market, and we are out there to help you guys all make a better life for yourselves. And don't believe the FUD. And it's shocking. Don't believe. Sometimes the politicians come out with crazy things. You see things on TV and newspapers, and it's like, why? You know, the manipulation is hardcore, and sometimes I can't believe my eyes.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Now I just blaze my own trail, make my own decisions.
Last thing, if you want to think about FUD, Think about when President Joe Biden came out and said, we're going to raise the capital gains tax from 20% long-term, or 23 or whatever it is, with those provisions to, I think he wanted to go to 40%
42%.
42%. He's like, it's going to happen. And of course, all that hasn't happened. It's all a big negotiation and a way to shock the system. And then, of course, it'll bring everybody to the table, and then they'll probably get like it to go to like 25%. And then everybody will claim a victory. And that's just how it works. So,
and just for people to know out there, just for the small retail investor to know, when that got announced, first of all, there's backroom meetings where they're planning that announcement ahead of time. And that's leaked to Wall Street. And Wall Street placed their bets that the market's going to tank when this news is released. And the market did tank.
What? No way. You're telling me that there's manipulation in traditional markets?
Well, I just want people to be aware of what's the shenanigans that are played, don't be fooled.
That's right.
But what's that old saying? Don't do what they say, do what they do.
Yeah.
So follow the big money, everybody. And there's your answer. Don't believe anything else. You don't need to pick up a newspaper or look at YouTube or anything else, unless, of course, you're listening to Rob.
Rob or James are the best answers, right?
All right. Well, thank you so much again for your time. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Be safe, everybody. We're going to sign off. Don't forget to subscribe to Rob's channel if you haven't already. It's a very good, fair, and balanced reporting on what's happening in the world. And he has some very good guests as well.